Accompanied by a large group of friends and family, this young man was exploring Utah's cramped Nutty Putty Cave when he became trapped upside down in a very tight tunnel. Blood began to collect in his brain as a result of the angle he was stuck at, posing a threat to his life if not rescued shortly. This is the story of John Jones and what has come to be known as the Nutty Putty Cave incident. Nutty Putty Cave, a hydrothermal cave, was first explored in 1960. The name was given after the soft, brown, putty-like clay which lined its walls. The system became famous because of its dozens of chambers connected by narrow passageways with low ceilings. Despite the fact that it needed a lot of squirming and crawling to get around, it was considered an appropriate cave system for beginners and received thousands of visitors each year. The different sections of the cave were given descriptive names, such as the birth canal, the maze, the aorta, or the scout eater. The cave's popularity had caused excessive smoothing of limestone rocks inside the cave to the point that it was predicted a fatality would occur in one of its sections. In fact, between 1999 and 2004, a number of people, including 2 Boy Scouts, became stuck in narrow parts of the cave and had to be rescued by professionals. In one of those cases, it took rescue crews 14 hours to rescue a 16-year-old scout from the cave using a complex system of pulleys. Following this incident, the cave was closed to visitors and wasn't reopened until May of 2009, after numerous requests from local cavers, or spelunkers as they are also known. A gate was then installed at the entrance, and visitors would need to book ahead of time to make sure that there was only a single group entering the cave at once. John Edward Jones, as well as his younger brother Josh, were introduced to cave exploring by their father in the early years of their lives. The 3 would go on caving expeditions all over their home state of Utah, and they learned to love exploring the interesting underground tunnels. Now 26 years old, John was married and the proud father of a 1-year-old daughter. Awaiting their second child, John and his family were living in Virginia, where John was attending medical school to become a pediatric cardiologist. While visiting his family back home in Utah for Thanksgiving, they all decided that it would be fun to explore the famous Nutty Putty Cave to celebrate the holiday. On November 24, 2009, and around 8 p.m., John and 10 other friends and family squeezed through the tight opening of Nutty Putty Cave. They were all exploring the biggest room of the cave. However, John, Josh, and a few more other experienced adults felt like they needed something more challenging and decided to try and find a section they heard of, named the birth canal. This is a narrow tunnel that drops down and then opens into a larger cavity, hence why it was named the birth canal. At around 9 p.m., John found a passageway, which he thought to be the section he was searching for. He squeezed inside and wriggled forward, head first. He crawled on his stomach but couldn't see that the tunnel would open up further ahead. In fact, it was getting narrower as he continued. Eventually, he came to a straight slope that plunged right straight down. Possibly thinking that this is the end of the birth canal, he pushed further down the tunnel, which became extremely tight. Immediately, John realized he had made a huge mistake. The tunnel did not open, but it became increasingly narrower, and John was now trapped upside down. In fact, the tunnel had never been charted specifically because it was far too small. Josh was close behind him and soon realized something was wrong. When he understood that John was stuck, he first attempted to pull him out, but was able only to shift him just a little bit before he slid down even further down the crevice. His hands were now shifted in uncomfortable positions. Realizing that the situation was beyond them, Josh quickly went to get help while another friend waited by John's side. Within hours, at around 12:30 a.m., rescue teams were on the site. It was established that John was 120 meters or 400 feet deep in the cave. The first rescuer to arrive was Susie Motola, and when she reached the part of the cave where John had become trapped, all she could see of him were his shoes. He thanked her for coming and told her that he really wanted to get out. Susie tried everything she could think of to release John from the narrow tunnel, including cutting off part of his jeans to free up some space. But after 2 hours, she became exhausted and she was forced to crawl back up to the surface. Over 100 people joined the rescue efforts in attempting to free John over the first 24 hours, with the narrow nature of the cave making it incredibly difficult to get rescuers to his location. After assessing the situation John was in and some planning, it was decided to use power tools to chip away at some of the rock formation that John was stuck in to enlarge the tunnel, but this proved to be way too slow due to how narrow the tunnel was. Rescuers had tried to use ropes and pulleys to pull John out. Only one person could go up or down the passageway at a time. When rescuers told on-site trauma doctor Doug Murdoch that John was positioned upside down, he made the team aware that this likely meant that John would only have 10 hours before his organs start failing. The human body is built to be upright, so the heart works with the force of gravity. If turned upside down, blood and fluids quickly begin to pool in the brain and lungs, eventually leading to difficulties in breathing. The heart then works overtime to pump blood around the body, which then leads to cardiac arrest. Eventually, the strain on the heart and the pulling in the brain is fatal. As rescuers were drilling the holes and attaching the pulleys into the walls of the cave, John started to have difficulty breathing and was alternating between being calm and being panicked. His state was deteriorating. A two-way radio was brought into the cave and lowered down to John so he could talk to his wife, who came on site bringing their daughter as soon as she was informed that John was stuck inside the cave. Although they were both worried, they tried to comfort each other. After the holes in the tunnel walls were drilled and the pulleys were in place, 19 hours after John became trapped in the crevice, 8 men grabbed the rope that was tied to John's legs and began pulling John out of the tunnel. Little by little, with short breaks for him to rest his body that was in excruciating pain, the men pulled the rope until John was almost out. In fact, John was pulled out of the crevice so much that he was able to make eye contact with one of the rescuers. He looked tired and his eyes were red, but he still managed to smile. The rescuer asked him how he was. He said, "It sucks. I'm upside down. I can't believe I'm upside down. My legs are killing me." The possibility of being rescued was now becoming a reality. John was almost out when, all of a sudden, tragedy struck again. The rope went loose when one of the pulleys broke free from the wall of the cave, taking with it part of the rock it has been fixed in, hitting in its way one of the rescuers and knocking him unconscious. When he woke up and the dust settled, they could see that John had slid right back into the crevice, this time even further than before. John's breathing was less frequent and much shallower as he was struggling to stay alive. The rescuers desperately tried to drill a new hole for the pulley, but when they tried to talk to John, they couldn't get a response. He had gone into cardiac arrest, and tragically, there was nothing anyone could do. A doctor was sent down to take a pulse. Sadly, John was pronounced dead a few minutes before midnight on November 25, 2009, 28 hours after he had initially become stuck. His friends and family, needless to say, were devastated by the news. Young, fit and healthy, father of one child and with another on the way, his loss in a cave system considered relatively safe for beginners was a shock to everyone. Rescuers and experts unanimously concluded that any attempt to retrieve his lifeless body would be too dangerous and impossibly difficult. The caves were still shut with concrete, turning into a tomb for John Edward Jones, where he remained ever since. A plaque was installed at the entrance of the cave to mark his forever resting place.